Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us. Sorry for the wait. We appreciate all of you taking your time this afternoon to listen in and provide feedback on the work we've been doing this year. As a reminder, we are recording the presentation portion of this afternoon for our future use. So who are we and why are we presenting to you? We are a group of design leaders comprised of students, designers, and architects from across the state of Virginia. We were selected for an intensive year-long program through the Virginia American Institute of Architects called the ELA, involving educational sessions and a year-long case study project. The project this year has been focused on your city of Portsmouth. You can probably recognize where this photo was taken. This is our group back in February exploring your town. Some of us are more familiar with the city of Portsmouth prior to this year, being stationed in the Hampton Roads area. But as a group, we've spent this year getting to know you and your city better and considering how to utilize the existing studies and characteristics of your city to encourage a thriving, evolving, and resilient downtown historic district that's already full of opportunities. So this brings us to our program. The words resiliency and evolution can be applied in many ways, depending on their context. And we chose to look at these as we take a deeper dive into the opportunities of your great city of Portsmouth. Today, you'll hear the voices of many as we discuss the numerous ways we've explored Portsmouth. Back in February, when we were able to be together in Portsmouth, we were provided with this prompt, focusing on creating strategies for the city to utilize the evolving downtown and old town historic districts and to aid in their growth, bringing new life to these areas. Looking through existing studies that have been completed for the city, as well as exploring different scales of time and design, and speaking with members of the community, such as yourself, we have come up with equitable and adaptable solutions, focusing on the waterfront and properties a little further inland within your city.
So from there, there's 16 of us in this group. So we decided, let's start throwing ideas at the wall. And within the first 24 hours of being in Portsmouth, we probably had over 1,000 ideas that were from very small scale to very large scale. And we started to bring these under the same umbrellas, as many as we could at least. And the same concepts kept coming up, and that's sustainability, community, connectivity, and place. Sustainability can be as easy as providing more green space for the community to use and less hard spaces, but it can also be about the materials that are being used in future developments, using grasses and native plantings and materials that are local that stand the test of time that you see through some of the historic buildings in your downtown. The next was community. No city can thrive without a supporting community. Many developments tend to focus on the visitor or bringing outside revenue into a city, but it's our belief that it's about the people such as yourselves and the businesses that are in the city right now. The more you can cater to them, the outside visitors will eventually come. Then there's connectivity. Developments need to think outside of just the boundaries of their property. How does their design connect to the neighboring one and further across the city? And finally, place. How to create a place for people to stop and enjoy and take in where they are. How can places help identify a city and give them that identity no matter where it is at on the map? So we came up with these great concepts that we wanted to see really further explore as we walked around Portsmouth, but where exactly were we going to implement them?
Back at the February session, we were able to walk through the city and experience firsthand the rich history and culture your city of Portsmouth has to offer. We were inspired by the opportunity we had to visit and explore. In our initial discussions about our task, we hoped to build on the already great work that was being undertaken by the community of Portsmouth. Several things we experienced in our walking tour were the different vacant lots for potential developments, as well as several things working well, such as walking throughout the city is very accessible, and the different connection points throughout. In connecting with the community, we asked the question, what makes Portsmouth so special? Things that we were reminded of were the close-knit community, as well as the city grid, which speaks to the rich history, the different options to develop throughout the pockets in the city, as well as the exciting connection to the waterfront.
So we continued asking these questions, trying to zero in on the best type of program and the best type of use for all of these spaces that the community really liked. And we solicited an inquiry to several members of the community. You've probably seen this. We posted it at a few stores downtown along High Street. And we just wanted to kind of further zero in on what we should do in the valuable space that already exists at downtown and at the waterfront. And this just looks at a few different places or venues where things could happen. Obviously, you see restaurants, entertainment, performances, which we found out were very big in terms of the festivals and the outdoor events. Now that the pavilion's back open, we'll be seeing a lot more of that, hopefully in the very near future. And so we tried to incorporate a way for a variety of activities to happen right at the waterfront and right in downtown. And again, this is just a result of that appreciative inquiry, trying to find the best places in Portsmouth where people tend to hang out. And like we've been saying, it's all centered around Old Town as well as the waterfront. And in our inquiry, we've been able to connect with all of the various organizations that you see here, as well as some that you don't see, but we've begun a great dialogue. And we've really tried to incorporate their needs in this space that we've been working on.
So at the same time that we were reaching out to you all to learn about how you experience Portsmouth, we also started to study the city from an urban planning perspective. We were trying to learn what is the composition of the city, how is the city grid laid out, where its borders and how are they defined, what are the areas and landmarks that define the character of the city. So we started diagramming as a way to study these different aspects. When we started to consider what sites we wanted our project to focus on, we began by looking at the various master plans that had already been completed over the years. And this image here shows the areas that each master plan studied all overlaid on each other. Not surprisingly, we saw how critical the waterfront was and is as a focal point for development, and started to also see a focus on the two main intersecting axes of Crawford and High Streets. When we overlaid all the various master plan areas, we could start to see also what those key sites were that kept coming up in multiple master plans. And you can see that here represented by the darker shades of color and outlined in yellow. This really helped us as we were starting to consider what areas our project should focus on.
So as most of you are aware, Portsmouth has several points of entry, which create many opportunities for first impressions. If you're not already in the city, you can approach the city through ferries, through the tunnels, or through the highways. When you find yourself in the city, you have the privilege of enjoying and experiencing the human and the pedestrian qualities that places like High Street provide, which are a wonderful element that can bring down and make you feel very comfortable in these streets. All of these different scales serve to reinforce the existing connectivity of Portsmouth, while they also show that there are some places and some areas that are lacking in connectivity and allow us to then make proposals to improve on that connectivity. Most of you are familiar with the city of Portsmouth. You know where you're going when you get in your car or when you're walking on the streets, but maybe you're missing out on some areas that you're not very familiar with or that you don't know that are there. Maybe you don't know all of the history that Portsmouth has to offer. Now put yourself in the shoes of a visitor, someone that has never been to Portsmouth. You know, it might be someone that comes on a Thursday for Sunset Thursdays or a Saturday for the farmer's market. Do you want them to just go to Portsmouth and leave after they go to this event? Or would you want them to stay a little bit longer and buy that thing in that small local shop or eat at that restaurant? Invest in your economy, invest in your city, and then leave Portsmouth with a great impression and go and tell their friends and family about it so that they can come back to Portsmouth and experience the city all over again.
So with all of those studies, we really kept coming back to that High Street corridor and just noticing the abundance of potential along that corridor between Effingham and the seawall is really where we started to focus. We were looking at the city in such a grand scale, but we really wanted to hone in on the core of downtown, which seemed to run along this High Street corridor. We really honed in on how walkable this area is, whether you're in Old Town, if you're at the seawall, and even walking all the way down to Effingham. And then studying some of the future developments that are coming to the city down by the jail site, as well as the County Street Garage. But we really wanted to focus those 4 concepts to be able to implement them at a smaller scale that's tangible and rooted in reality. So from that first visit in February, as we walked down High Street, we really noticed the impact of the mural of Battle of Craney Island at Green Street and High Street intersection. We were encouraged that the city put this type of effort into public art in an underutilized site. We started to learn more about that site and the history at that corner and the devastation that happened to Zion Baptist Church. And we wanted to explore this further. How can we beautify this site to be one of our urban anchors and a place for the community? We named this site Green Street Crossing. So as we moved on from Green Street towards our next destination, towards the waterfront, we quickly took in the rich historical fabric of the courthouse and the churches and the Commodore Theater, but there really wasn't a place to stop and collect as a larger group. It was really a point A to point B trip working towards the seawall. We thought, how can we better this experience for the pedestrian and really enhance the foot traffic in front of all of these storefronts? Can High Street become a cohesive city center with a larger collection of smaller places along the way for community enjoyment? This extra level of connectivity through sight lines and green areas and places where groups can gather is something we wanted to explore further. And then finally, with Green Street Crossing being our anchor on the west side that bleeds into this High Street pedestrian way, it was only natural that High Street Landing and the inlet that is already there become our eastern anchor. There's been so much effort already put into this area in the inlet with some of the pavings and the events that go down there. We wanted to further explore how we can build on top of this, further enhance what the city has already done at the seawall to provide those extra support for the activities that occur in this area. With the effort that's been put to beautify the seawall and the High Street Landing, we wanted to think about how does that extend back up High Street towards Effingham? And how can we bring those ideas of beautification back further from the waterfront?
As you move down High Street and to the west of Effingham, a visible decline in pedestrian activity and urban development can be seen. You enter downtown from Effingham into an area that seems very foreign to Portsmouth. How can we define the downtown corridor and help celebrate this unique fabric of High Street? Furthermore, what opportunities along High Street could help energize the downtown and create the sustainable, connected, community-focused corridor that we talked about? As mentioned before, creating the Green Street Crossing, High Street, and High Street Landing connection can help define this downtown corridor where activity and community intersect in a great way. Located at the intersection of High and Green Street, the Green Street Crossing site contains 2 large vacant lots that offer a break from the endless brick houses and storefronts that line High Street. The reuse of this site is critical in stimulating the pedestrian foot traffic at the end of the corridor. At 1.6 acres, it is the second largest undeveloped land area in Portsmouth. I think many of you are familiar with kind of the old Holiday Inn site that sits to the northeast of the city on the waterfront, but this site is often overlooked. A large open green space for relaxation in an urban setting is currently not represented anywhere along the High Street corridor and is highly desired from our community feedback that you saw earlier. As Jake mentioned, this can be a place for large gatherings that help bring traffic to High Street. So this new Green Street Crossing site, Green Street Crossing, it can be contextual. It can draw from the existing identity of Portsmouth's downtown. Green Street Crossing can be educational, informing the public on the history from the great mural that's already existing. And Green Street Crossing can be a community anchor, drawing from the past influences of Zion Baptist Church, the H. Edward Whitaker Education Center that currently sits on site, and a newly proposed 3-story community center that helps activate this end and bring public projects towards this end of the corridor. So walking up High Street, the community center blends seamlessly into the row houses and sits back a little bit to help define a place. And a big adjacent plaza with public art and places for gathering sits right outside of the community center. A park set back further into the site offers respite and can be a bridge that extends between the plaza space and the community center. And it is a place for events like outdoor movies, exercise classrooms, picnics, and soup kitchens, all activities that foster wellness and community relationships. And then we have Green Street Crossings Park, an introduction of new sidewalk materials, colorful seating, and signage will all draw the pedestrian off into the park. This bold new signage package can create a cohesive image for downtown corridor and beyond, while the lawn helps further define the Green Street Crossing and activates the site to create a destination for the residents of Portsmouth and its visitors. Really has a place at the end of Effingham that says, "You have arrived in Portsmouth." We have 2 paths that wrap around the park to define this area. One pulling you further into the site to the left towards the playground, the other to the Mural Garden. This garden is a place where you can relax, you can contemplate and educate about the Battle of Craney Island with this beautiful mural that sits there. The Battle of Craney Island helped save Norfolk and Portsmouth from the British invasion in 1812. This existing mural is a great example of how Green Street Crossing and the downtown corridor can help tell the history of Portsmouth that is so rich and educate those who come to this great city. Further walking down the site, you'll find a nice playground, but also murals on the backside of the Whitaker Education Center that seems to be otherwise not given much attention to. This space can help bring the community together and also help serve to be another community anchor on the site. Next to the site, we reuse an old parking lot and the asphalt to create a playground for the community. This playground can bring families and people to the area and help retain those young families that I know economic development always wants to help grow the city through. Green Street Crossing creates a space where community relationships, education, and activity all intersect to energize the downtown corridor. But why stop at Green Street?
So now that we have this beautiful place at Green Street Crossings, we want to continue this on the High Street all the way towards Waterfront. But we can't have parks at every stop along the way. Or can we? There's many different ways that we can go about engaging the pedestrian as they walk down High Street, especially in front of your businesses, your storefronts, your restaurants, your museums. The way to do this, in our opinion, is to really give the street back to the pedestrian. to connect all of these different uses. In the end, the foot traffic is what keeps your downtown thriving, not necessarily the car. So while walking around High Street, we felt the abundance of vehicles and lack of space for pedestrians to gather. And it just felt like this, let's get from point A to point B and take a couple pictures along the way. A very simple and small intervention to be able to achieve this is a parklet. A parklet is a small temporary structure that fits within the dimension of a parallel parking space. This can be designed in many different ways, whether it's seating for a restaurant or coffee shop, or just some park space in front of a retail shop for people to wait for people inside. There's different opportunities to use materials such as weathered wood and oxidized steel, which are reminiscent of many of the shipyards around Portsmouth. And you can use these small, subtle ways to ingrain materials into these new constructions to call back to Portsmouth's rich history. These parklets are small examples of giving the busy street back to the people. They also bring unique ways of incorporating greenery, plantings, public art, and even business sponsorships throughout the downtown district. Thinking beyond a parklet, the existing median is lush with green, grass and trees and signage, but unfortunately it's isolated away from the pedestrian on the sidewalk. It also allows cars to travel at a quicker rate of speed because they don't have to worry about an oncoming car that's in front of them. So the idea here is to shift that green space and give it back to one side of the street, in this case, the north side that receives more sun. Repositioning this softscape to that side begins to create these mini parks along the way. Utilizing hardscapes like brick pavers integrated with softer scapes like the grasses or pavers that can allow water to drain through are various ways to engage the streetscape while maintaining a lush downtown. These patterns can provide flexibility for various everyday uses, as well as weekend uses for fairs and community events. Though this road is still for vehicles and cyclists, there's an opportunity for more crossings and signage that allow these cross-street connections and visual connections mid-block rather than only at your four-way intersections. As the pedestrian becomes more integrated to the landscape of High Street, the car starts to be deferred north and south to Queen and King Streets and County Streets. Parking is still a necessity, but it's not far off if it's relegated on the back side of these establishments, keeping the storefronts of High Street at the forefront of the activity rather than the parked vehicle. This proposes a grander idea of the future. High Street as a fully pedestrian way, providing various hard and softscapes that blend the lines between the former vehicle road to a meandering sidewalk. The pedestrian way extends the sense of place beyond just the 10-foot by 10-foot sidewalk in front of your storefront. Cross connections between north and south of High Street are endless, but can be coordinated intentionally to correspond with specific signage and pedestrian needs.
So when we visited Portsmouth back in February, we found ourselves relying a lot on our phones to find our way around the city. Like Catherine mentioned before, not all of us are super familiar with that city. The truth is, you're a growing city with many activities and new and exciting events and places to visit, and you're gonna keep growing. Your signage needs to be a reflection of the growth of your city and of the permanence and the history of Portsmouth. So what does this mean to you? Well, we are proposing signage that by scale and design create a sense of place, like Jake mentioned before, a sense of hanging out, more than just encouraging passing through. Successful signage, we believe, does more than just point you to your next destination. It can tell you a story. It can show you points of interest nearby. It can make you aware of areas that you don't know that you should visit. For example, we were we were in Old Town, and we, if it wasn't because someone told us of the seawall, we wouldn't have known that it was so close to us. So doing this, how are we going to do this? Benches will encourage resting and engaging. Light posts will create a more comfortable environment at night to encourage people and to make people feel comfortable to look at the signage and find their way around. And as you see here, art installations can really attract people and make them curious and bring them to this area where they will further then engage with our wayfinding posts, which Paris is going to talk about now.
Yeah, so this is a visual of the proposed signage that Gabby just mentioned to be used throughout our project site. The wayfinding posts are outfitted with maps of the local area and marked with subtle splashes of color to mark the locations of attractions, restaurants, or art installations that may serve as wayfinding points around the city. Each color is meant to represent a different neighborhood in the city, and the blue that you see in this visual is in reference to the existing Portsmouth blue. The materials featured in the signs, those being oxidized steel, wood, or granite, are chosen as a nod to the city's existing material fabric. The signs we're proposing also incorporate sections dedicated to education, displaying facts about the city, local businesses, and community events. And they also have sections near the bottom, which are dedicated to thanking the sponsors who contributed to the city's improvement.
At the eastern end of High Street, we arrive at the river's edge. We've identified a few key areas of potential improvement that would create this beautiful place to be for everyone. This area currently has some hard surfaces like asphalt or concrete, but one of our goals is to increase the amount of native plantings, bringing local wildlife to the area. High Street already is such a lively pedestrian zone from Effingham to Crawford, and adding a strong walkable connection all the way from Green Street to the waterfront at High Street Landing would set up the downtown area for an incredible pedestrian experience. Between Crawford and Water Street here, you can see that High Street continues the pedestrian level experience from previous images on the pedestrian street market. You can also see we have a green terrace, a concourse, an activity space, and a pavilion. This area of the project is designed to be for the city walker, and though it has vehicular access through High Street, the paving patterns and plantings bring the scale down to an intimate level, which will promote community gathering and comfort. Our hope is that this becomes the final link between the activity of High Street to the waterfront, showcasing the culture of downtown Portsmouth. Here we are at street level, looking down High Street towards the inlet. You can see this rhythm of market stalls on the left, a one-way drive lane in the middle, and parking on the right side with plenty of room on either side for more pedestrian activity. Still on Crawford Street, looking down High Street, we're looking at this wonderful walking area with plenty of plantings and permeable pavers that allow water to be carried to planters on the far left, and then all the way to the inlet. You can also see how well the information posts, benches, and other elements start to fit in on site and identify this as a cohesive place. On the other side of the street, we've found a place for food trucks to park and for visitors to sit and relax in these temporary setups. The paving is at the level of the sidewalk, and combining that with the other elements of the site work, it really slows down the cars on the street, making it pedestrian friendly and safe. Here we're getting a closer look at the market stalls. These structures would allow for the farmers market to have a home, and it would allow for other vendors to set up small temporary tents or tables to share their product. There's a lot of room for parking on either side of the street for when the market isn't in use, And during these times, these shades act as a resting or a meeting place. The roof structure creates a sense of movement, sort of undulating as you walk down this pedestrian way. And the semi-transparent roof material lets the items on the table be well lit but under cover. And you can also see the built-in planters that bring even more life to the market area with plantings that are local to Portsmouth. We've also developed this concept for modular signs. These could be used at the market, and the materials designed they're designed to blend in with the light posts, the seating, and the information posts that we've shown. This kind of flexibility would allow anyone using the shade structures or their own pop-up tent to share in that market identity. And now we're starting to leave the market area, looking across Water Street at the High Street landing. Here you can easily cross over Water Street as it's still at the level of the sidewalk, again ensuring that there's slower traffic and a safe pedestrian experience.
Crossing the street from the market, we have High Street Landing. The inlet at the landing has a focused landscape design that's echoed throughout the larger High Street corridor, with an emphasis on treating groundwater and increasing native habitats and addressing floodwaters. The vegetated terrace at the river's edge embodies these three components. The existing concrete terrace becomes an elevated terrace, lush with native plants, descending to an oyster bed at the river's edge. These plants, native to Portsmouth's river ecosystem, will capture and filter stormwater before re-entering the river. Each level of the terrace drains into the next, allowing stormwater to naturally filter down. The terrace will decrease the amount of hard surfaces along the river and provide a place for plants to flourish. The oyster beds, which lie between the boardwalk and the terrace, provide a second habitat. Oysters are great at filtering water. Providing beds at the base of the terrace will act as a secondary stormwater filtration system. These beds will not only treat water from the plaza above, but will clean water from the Elizabeth River, increasing water quality. The terrace aims to increase biodiversity along Portsmouth's promenade, while the boardwalk, reaching over the river's edge, proposes to enhance a visitor's connection with the river. The boardwalk, pulled into the river, provides a direct axial connection from High Street overlook toward the ferry landing. The boardwalk is experienced at different levels, allowing a visitor to sit on a bench at street level or walk along the river in the oyster beds. We look to the Elizabeth River Project and Chesapeake Bay Foundation for inspiration on projects that are currently built and best practices for sustainable landscape strategies. By balancing the plantings and usable space along the river, we aim to create a unique environment that will showcase the beauty that this site has to offer. Using sustainable landscape strategies will not only benefit the site and the High Street corridor, but can be used as a model for future development along the river.
As we pull back in this slide, you can see the layout of the inlet in its entirety. At the north of the site, a grand concourse connects back to the market across Water Street through a system of decorative paving. The open concourse provides a central pedestrian promenade that encourages foot traffic from the market and downtown areas to the waterfront and sculptural pavilion. The pavilion, located on the peninsula of the inlet, provides a visual marker both as a capstone to the High Street corridor, as well as establishing a point of reference for downtown Portsmouth when arriving by boat. A shaded pergola adjacent to the concourse area provides an area of respite. A portion of this structure extends out to create a signage opportunity to mark the plaza as the terminus of the downtown corridor. Tables and chairs, together with built-in planters and green space, encourage visitors to relax and linger. A small covered stage area also provides a place for artists to perform. The green roof of the stage area captures water and deposits it through a decorative scupper into a sculptural stormwater basin. Stormwater from the adjacent plaza and concourse will be funneled into this basin as well. The water will then be dispelled under the concourse to be filtered through the tiered planters along the riverbank and back into the river. The large waterfront pavilion is situated on the site to provide a dramatic endpoint to the High Street corridor. The structure of the pavilion consists of bent wood beams and joists supported on columns with a transparent membrane sheathing the roof. The bent beams and skeletal nature of the design both reference historic wooden shipbuilding techniques. Under the pavilion, a small flat roof structure is located that provides amenities such as a snack bar and restrooms. The floor of the pavilion is raised above the surrounding plaza. A ramp and stairs provide access to this elevated area where outdoor seating is located. The space will serve as both a waiting area as well as a vantage point for residents and visitors to observe the waterfront. Decorative planters with seating, which are adjacent to the pavilion, surround a splash area. The tip of the pavilion will retain the flagpole and plinth, but the surrounding hardscape has been changed to a lawn populated with interactive games and public art. As we move across the site out over the water, the connection from the existing terminus of High Street to the waterfront fully comes into view. The pavilion serves as a focal point to draw people into the site by boat. The concourse then encourages pedestrian traffic through the High Street landing site, across Water Street, through the High Street Market, and finally back into the existing High Street corridor. A series of spaces are created by linking the main downtown commercial corridor with the waterfront through this design that will drive business traffic as well as provide areas for various outdoor activities for residents and visitors to Portsmouth alike.
Okay, everyone. I know you can't believe it, but we're almost at the end of the presentation. So to tie all these amazing designs that we did, we wanted something that was meaningful, that would literally tie all these different pieces together. So the city already has a strong brand, and whether you're coming from the highway, from the river, or by the ferry, we wanted something that could represent the city and the soul of the community, not only in our design site, but anywhere else in the city. So as you approach the city via the series of tunnels and underpasses, we wanted the city to start representing its character and the things it offers. The proposed design that you see on your screens not only revitalizes the dark and dingy tunnels that we currently have, but also hints at the locations and the activities in the city, as you can see in the image below. Well, let's say you approach the city by ferry. So we wanted a simple yet effective symbol to represent Portsmouth, but we also wanted something that can be tangible and hopefully, if anyone among you are willing to support it, to realize. We call it the P, as in Portsmouth. We wanted the feel and the intention of the object to be from the city, not alien to it. Therefore, you can see that we used similar materials. We used oxidized steel in this case, which is widely used in the naval sector that is prevalent in the city. We wanted this to be not only an opportunity to represent the city, but to bring the community together. So as Portsmouth already houses an immense knowledge of steel construction, we aim to utilize steel manufacturers and workers in the city to use their unused scrap material and to literally reuse this material to create an elegant installation that you saw in the previous slide. Involving and employing skilled community members may be especially important nowadays as we are going through the financial repercussions of a global pandemic. So Portsmouth, as we got to know, is a city collective of histories, cultures, and it has a lot to offer. Here we see an option of these art installation where important figures from Portsmouth are cut out from the object, projecting a dynamic play of shadow and light on the ground. So imagine these names move around as the sun moves throughout the day, giving the object almost an ethereal layer as its shadows transforms with the setting sun. One thing we also hope you will be also excited is the flexibility of this object. The P, as we call it, is able to be interpreted and transformed according to the context of the specific site it's installed at, giving the object variety, vibrancy to the art piece, and intrigue to the visitor as they move around the city and found different interpretations of this object.
Now, we do have plenty of time for comments, questions, and answers, but first, we wanted to thank you for taking the time to participate, and thank you sincerely for your input and guidance along the way. Now, who has the first question?